ladies and gentlemen, once again to In Groove, a music podcast that focuses on discussions of what else but music. Everything from the bestsellers to the unknowns and everything in between. On this episode, we'll be discussing album picks, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Dan Griffin.
Hello, everyone.
And Branden and Jarrod.
Hey.
And like I said, we'll be discussing album picks, album recommendations this week, like we have been.
Yeah.
Each of us recommended one album for each other guest, each other host, should I say. So we have 6 albums to talk about, and we're going to see if our opinions line up or if there's some discrepancies, and we're going to try to clear them up. And just discuss some good music. So we're going to get right to it. We're going to kick it off with Branden, and he's going to talk about the album that I recommended to him.
Yes, so Jarrod recommended me this week an album by an extreme black metal band, Behemoth, called The Satanist. Now, this is a particularly interesting pick because I am a Roman Catholic. And so there were some interesting topics dealt with on this album entitled The Satanist. It was it was interesting to hear the perspective of a Satanist and get a glimpse into what they sort of believe. It's a topic that I had never really explored before. The main sort of takeaway that I had thematically from this album was that Satanism is, in fact, the antithesis of Christianity. It is as opposite as you can get from that religion. But so thematically, I'm gonna have to disagree with much of the album, but musically, really phenomenal. I really enjoyed the album musically. Like, it is hardcore. The vocals are fantastic. Like, they have like these nice like little trumpet highlights throughout, and like that's something that I don't hear a lot in death metal or extreme metal, and it's really unique for the genre. Very well done. The guitars are fucking badass.
Yeah.
Like, really they shred throughout. Yeah. So overall, a pretty good album, but I'm not going to condone any of the messages.
Yeah, I mean, when you get into listening to black metal and death metal, you sort of have to separate your own opinions from those of the artist, and also sort of take what their opinions are with a grain of salt. You know,
unless you are into that, like, I'm not going to judge anyone.
Yeah, but even when you listen to a band like Mayhem, this great early black metal band, one of the founders of the genre, where, you know, one of the band members killed another one of the band members, and you have like all this kind of shit going on, like,
yeah, they're hardcore.
Or a band like Dissection that has some very, very hot, you know, risque opinions, or Emperor, one of the members of Emperor, this great fucking black metal band, you know, killed a gay man in a park one night. Like, there's like this very brutal and, you know, uncondonable things going on behind some of this music. Not necessarily this band. I don't find them to be, I don't think they're a very controversial band, really. No, with their opinions or their actions, like those early black metal bands were. But this is a band out of Poland, and the singer recently had leukemia, and they took a break, you know, for him to recover, and this is their sort of return.
It's phenomenal.
And
really phenomenal.
Man,
glad he's doing well.
Yeah, he's doing well, and he really comes through on this album. The vocals are great, and not that I've heard all of their albums, but I've heard a few of them, and I think this one is their best. It's their most mature and sort of well-rounded album. I mean, right from the beginning with Blow Your Trumpets, Gabriel, it's
that song is fucking awesome.
Some different stuff going on. It's not balls to the wall blast beats, the double bass drumming. That's a very sort of slow, heavy, brooding, sort of almost doom metal-esque song, going into, you know, I think my favorite track on here might be the title track, The Satanist. Just And in the latter half of that track, you have this spoken word piece going on with this crazy horn work going on in the background, this sort of ambient, growing, darkness, and it explodes in a fury at the end with this trumpet blast that sort of lingers in the air and fades away. And it's very, like you said, very unique for the genre to hear, horns and. They're here more as coloration, as flourishes. They're not like giving features or anything, but it's such a good way to complement the brutality of the guitars and the heavy drum work. And I think every track on here is a winner.
One of my favorite tracks is the final track.
Definitely.
What's that called?
O Father, O Satan, O Son.
O Satan, O Son. Yeah. That one's really, really tight, and like whoever does the backing vocals on that, like his clean vocals contrast with the harsh vocals very well. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I mean, when I heard this album, pretty close to when it came out. It came out February of this year. I heard it a few months ago, and just sort of blew me away. It was sort of. Wow, this is like the death metal album I've been waiting for. It's not so straightforward. It's unique. It's got a lot of variety to the songwriting. The more and more you listen to it, the songs pop out individually more. And it sort of blends a lot of different elements in a way that sounds cohesive and fresh. And just the performances alone are really spectacular. And I think the band works really well as a whole. They're a trio.
Oh, wow.
And
guitar, bass, drums?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, nice.
And so that's Behemoth, the Satanist. Any other thoughts, Brandon?
Yeah, what would you give it on a scale of 1 to 5 stars or 10 stars?
Probably like a 7 or 8 out of 10.
Oh, wow.
So like 3.5, 4 stars.
Good.
Yeah,
that's good.
I mean, this is like a perfect album for me. I'm going 5 out of 5 on this one because
I'm just like the theme sort of docks a star for me. So. I don't know, it's hard for me to separate some of that from the musicality of the album.
It's fair enough. Fair enough to say if you're not into the whole menacing content.
When I listen to an album like this, I like to read along with the lyrics so that I understand what they're saying. And like that was kind of I don't think I've ever heard the word rape used so many times in an album.
Yeah.
Like in a very, very passionate way, like a religious way, like.
Yeah, everything about this album is sort of like biblical in proportions and like anti-biblical in theme, but it's not throwaway sort of Cannibal Corpse-esque death metal gore.
No,
for the sake of gore. It's a lot more heady and intellectual than that, which is sort of more objectionable if you have a problem with the content than just throwaway nasty gore lyrics that are sort of more gimmicky.
It's not just them spouting out shit. They believe. They sound very convinced in what they're saying, and I believe that. I get the sense that they are exactly who they portray themselves as. Yeah,
definitely. Okay, cool. They just have a great vibe too. Great corpse paint on everyone, and
their paint looks so cool.
Yeah, you gotta love the corpse paint, but I don't know, they're pretty badass. Their album Demigod was sort of the one that put them on the map, and that's a really good album too. A more balls to the wall, straight up death metal album.
All right.
This one's a more, they started out as a black metal band, and this one sort of has some of those elements coming back, more harsh guitar work, and not so much of the drumming going on. A bit more slowness to it, especially with that title track. Not the title track, the opening track, that really just, the crushing riffs and the pounding drums, and just sort of the atmosphere of it that you don't find usually in death metal. But this is a death metal album, which is sort of why this is sort of, when I first heard it, I said, this is like the death metal album I've been waiting for all my life. Just sort of...
Very, very strong.
Yeah, so strong. And gets such a personality to just the musicality of it. But, without further ado, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, good album.
And we're going along to Dan with his album recommendation from Brandon.
Okay, so Brandon recommended me Fashion Nugget by a group called Cake.
I love Cake.
Who doesn't? This album came out in 1996. Rock band. There's a lot of different elements in this album. There was like a rockabilly esque track. Overall, pretty good album. The first half of the album, I was like, I was a little unsure. I was like, okay, these songs are okay. Once they got to the Gloria Gaynor cover of I Will Survive, that was the turning point. And everything after that, I thought the songs were great. A few standout tracks I listed were She'll Come Back to Me. I liked Italian Leather Sofa.
Branden and I were just saying that's one of, if not our favorite song.
Probably one of the best songs on the album.
Stick Shifts and Safety Belts, I like that one too. And Daria, is there a song? Daria, right?
Daria, yeah.
That's another good one. I know that's in the beginning of the album, but overall, I definitely liked this band was a melting pot of a lot of different subgenres, and how their interpretations of it was quite interesting. So I would give it a 3 out of 5.
Yeah.
Overall, pretty good album. Yeah.
For me, this album is really just like this is the perfect Cake album for me. As far as the band goes, it's like their best album that I've heard, and I'd have to disagree with you in that I really enjoyed the first half of the album a lot more than the second half.
Wow.
Generally.
Yeah, I agree too. Just in general, yeah.
Like the follow up from "Friend is a 4-letter word" to "Open Book." That it really explores sort of the ending of a relationship, and I think that in modern day times you could relate it to the friend zone, and friend is a 4-letter word is this guy who feels like he's a friend though, but then immediately after that is Open Book, which is about him sort of realizing this girl isn't straightforward. She's a book, and I don't have any idea what to do with her. It's not because she's it's not because she just wants to. It's not because she's friend zoning you. It's because she's a fucking human, and you're treating her like a piece of property, and you're not understanding her as a person. And that's something that's a really powerful theme that carries out throughout the album. There's a lot of different sort of relationship explorations that they go through. Yeah. And then there's a lot of great tunes in there. Like you said, the Gloria Gaynor cover I really love. I personally think it's better than the original, but the original is great too.
The original is hard. It's
I still go with the original, but it's a good companion piece.
Yeah, I really enjoy their cover though. I just like Cake's style.
Yeah.
And Italian Leather Sofa, like you said, is fantastic. Then there's on the second half, it's more fun tracks. You've got Nugget, which is all shut the fuck up. It's sort of sticking it to the man. Heads of state who ride and wrangle, look at your face from more than one angle. It's just shut the fuck up. I don't care about your marketing.
Yeah. But so and one thing I will point out, I didn't realize that the band has been around since the 90s. Yeah. I thought that they were not extremely recent, but I thought maybe I don't know, they've been around since 2004. But I didn't really know much about them honestly. Yeah. But overall, pretty good album. Definitely have to give more of their stuff a listen.
Yeah, I like this album. I like the choice of covers sort of is a good way to describe the album to someone who hasn't heard it. You have a disco cover, you have an old Cuban tune being covered, and you have a Willie Nelson tune being covered.
Yeah.
So that's a huge, wide variety, and not that they sound like disco tunes, old Cuban tunes, and Willie Nelson tunes. Absolutely. They sound like Cake tunes.
They put their own spin on it, exactly.
But it just sort of shows you the variety of the band's interests, and I think those songs are pretty strong. Like I said, Italian Leather Sofa is one of my favorites. Obviously, The Distance is a good song. I like the opener, Frank Sinatra, a lot.
Yeah, that was a good one.
When I was trying to talk to Branden earlier about it, and I said if I was going to describe them to someone who hadn't heard them, though they probably wouldn't be, if they hadn't ever heard Cake, they probably wouldn't be familiar with these other 4 bands. But I'd say they're the cross section between Primus, Beck, They Might Be Giants, and Pavement. If you put all of them into a mixing bag and shook them up,
that's pretty.
That's what they would sound like to me. I hear elements of all of them. Nugget sounds like their version of Beck's Loser to me. But then you have The Distance to me sounds very 90s They Might Be Giants, like something off of Factory Showroom or John Henry. Just like the bass in it and the horns sound very like something off of John Henry. And the guitar work on a lot of this sounds like Pavement. Not as dissonant, but sort of that sort of flavor. And
like
some of the just kookiness of the songwriting. And there's one track in particular, the guitar sounds a lot like Primus. And
yeah, that's an interesting way to put it.
Those are sort of all bands that were contemporaries of them too, and they fit in with those. That's like a little grouping of sort of alternative rock bands.
Yeah,
you know, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd give this album a 4 out of 5. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I'd give it this one a 5 out of 5. Really great. Because as far as cake goes, this is the cream of the cake.
Yeah,
cream of the cake. Yeah. But any last thoughts?
No, I mean, I think I definitely have to give it another listen, and there are other albums and stuff. So, but yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, yeah, like you said, Jared, it was a lot of it was a big melting pot and had a lot of different elements of. That's really clever the way you put that though, because at times I was like, oh yeah, it does sound a little bit like, Primus and things like that. So, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But we're moving along, and it's my turn to talk now. And I'm talking about the recommendation I got from Branden, which was The Deer Hunter. Not Deer Hunter, but The Deer Hunter. Two different bands. Hunter. Though I like Deer Hunter, too.
I like the movie.
Yeah, I like the film as well. Yeah. Excellent film by Michael Cimino. But not Deer Hunter, who I also like, but The Deer Hunter. And this is their 2009 album, Act 3, Life and Death. I've heard Act 2 before, but I hadn't heard Act 3, so Branden is a big fan of this band, and he recommended this to me. Okay, this is how I'm going to start it off. Do you guys remember that My Chemical Romance song, The Black Parade?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. With the piano and the beginning.
That song has gone in and out of favor with me, like, consistently since I heard it.
Since, like,
way
2006.
back when it came out, 2006. I think at first I sort of liked it, then I hated it for a period, then I was like, oh, no, this song's pretty good, it's interesting, and then, no, it really isn't, and it's gone in and out of favor with me over and over and over again as I've, changed over the years, and I haven't heard it in a while, so I don't know where I stand with it right now.
We'll get back to you on
that. Now, do any of you remember that Avenged Sevenfold song, A Little Piece of Heaven?
Yeah.
Yes.
That song I always hated. The first second I heard it, I said, "Oh, Mr. Bungle ripoff, straight up." It's so every inch of it is Mr. Bungle ripoff, and I've never liked that song. I think it's sloppy. I don't think the pieces fit. But why I bring those two songs up is those songs sort of fail at what this album excels at. Both of those songs are sort of appropriate more mainstream alternative sounds of the modern age to trying to make a progressive song. And what I would say is those songs, the pieces don't exactly fit together. They don't gel too much, the transitions. They feel like more gimmicky songs. Like, they seem to harken back more to the idea of prog being something like Bohemian Rhapsody rather than, the musical box or something like that. And they just feel very pasted together, very Pro Tools cut and paste sort of interpretations of progressive rock. And neither of them ever really cemented as good versions of that sort of songwriting going from part to part.
It's a really interesting way of putting it.
Because they don't sound like prog bands. All three of those bands, when they do these songs, they don't sound like prog bands. They don't sound like Yes. They don't have the synthesizers and the intense drumming and the time signature changes that are all over the wazoo, or the vocal approach. They're modern indie alternative hardcore influenced bands, but those sort of takes on prog have been various degrees of fulfilling for me. And I feel like this album should have gone down that path and failed in those similar ways, but it doesn't. And I think it has to do with just the band's understanding of composition and musicality and how to juggle those various influences into a multi-section song.
Oh, Casey Crescenzo does a great job with
Yeah,
all of his
I
writing.
think so. And I think in Deer Hunter, it's less gimmicky because each song is sort of doing this in one way or the other, and they don't feel like tracks where the band is saying, oh, look how many different genres we can play. Look at how we can string them together. Look, we're going to tell a story. It's going to be so epic. Now, they're doing all those things, of course, with this album. It's a concept album. They're stringing together different genres, different, tempos into single pieces. But they're much more organic and actually progressive songs than those two aforementioned less successful tracks. So this album opens up with these great vocal harmonies. It's like the Beach Boys came back and joined forces with Coheed and Cambria. It's a great introduction. It's ripe with tension, and it just, you're pumped for the album. You're like, let's go. It's gonna bust into some oompa oompa steampunk indie prog crap any second. And when it does, it's this great song, Incata Venenum. And I love the vocal performance in this song. And it's got very hardcore sort of vibes, and the little flashes of horn flavoring, and then towards the end of it, takes a turn. It's like the band went to a luau, and it's awesome. And it sounded, actually, to bring up Mr. Bungle again, it reminded me of some of the stuff off Mr. Bungle's last album, California, like the track Retro Vertigo, just sort of a twisted luau itself. And at the end there, you have all sorts of good vocal harmonies and counter lines going on, and it felt like an organic progression. That's the point I'm trying to make, that I like the songwriting on here. Some other tracks that really stood out, I love The Tank.
Oh, I love that song. Probably one of my favorites on the album.
Yeah. The vocals are delivered through this filter that sort of sounds like a microphone or like a crackling loudspeaker, like a air raid siren or something. Yeah, and the shifts of tension throughout the song are really great, and again, really strong backup vocals. I love The Poison Woman, which is sort of has a dark cabaret vibe to it. Other tracks do too, but I thought this was the strongest of them. And it's like swinging, and it has recorders and jaunty pianos and hi-hat is going on, and it has a saxophone solo at the end, which, a minor complaint I'll say, I wish it could have been brought up a bit more in the mix. I would have liked the saxophone solo a bit more up front, which I'll say generally this album, sometimes the production falters for me, just in that some of this great coloring and, augmented instrumentation is buried a bit behind the more traditional rock sound, the bass guitar, drums of the mix.
Okay.
And I wish sometimes they could have been brought more into the forefront, but it's a very, very minor complaint. A few other tracks I like. I love The Thief. It's in 5/4, which is probably one of my favorite odd time signatures.
It's totally prog.
Yeah, and it has a very dreamy quality to it. The second verse especially had these twinkling chimes and this heavy reverb, and then when the chorus came along, it sort of took a U-turn, and the parts blended well. This Beautiful Life is a song I really liked. This is like the most Beach Boys-ish track on here. It has the ba-ba-da-ba-da's backing vocals going, but it works so well. Somehow that complements this metallic sounding guitar line going throughout. And at the end, it really goes all out with the harmonies. It's so Beach Boys, with all these very sweet, saccharine vocal harmonies going on. But they have a bit of grit and edge to it. The underbelly of these sweet vocals is the sort of more proggy, hardcore elements to the sound. And by all accounts, like those Avenged Sevenfold and My Chemical Romance tracks, it shouldn't work. I feel like stylistically it shouldn't work, but it does. And then I like the closing track, the title track, Life and Death, a lot. Piano driven, again, great use of crescendos, decrescendos, the parts blending into each other. And, When We Die Alone is a repeated lyric throughout it that I liked. And I found it a very powerful track and a good way to end the album. Mm-hmm. I'll admit sometimes there is a bit of mismatched quality to it. Sometimes the parts don't always blend. There was a bit too much oompa oompa rhythms during times for me, and but for the most part, especially the vocals, really work well. There's some Claudio Sanchez-esque post-hardcore swoons that are really well implemented, and they always complement those backing vocal harmonies really well. The only other negative thing I'll say is I really, with these Deer Hunter albums, can't get into the concept at all. I find it just totally superfluous to the music. I know it's the backbone of the dramatic, shifts in the sound throughout the album, but I find the story very lackluster and not very interesting. But overall, I found all those sounds blended together well, and though the album might be a little overlong, it wasn't as overlong as Act 2, which I prefer this, to. I thought this was a stronger follow-up, a more tight follow-up, though it might be, like I said, a little overlong. But overall, like I said, I think I've been very positive about this album, and I liked it a lot. I'd probably give it out of 5. I'd probably give it a 4. I liked it. Brandon, any thoughts?
Yeah, I really, really love this album. I'm a big fan of the story, I'm gonna say.
What about it really appeals to you?
I just think it's pretty nifty. It's not a totally detailed story from what I can tell so far. It's starting to get more into the depth of the story. It's sort of about a guy who falls in love with a hooker, and how she's not really in love with him. She's just a whore, and he thinks that she loves him. But it's a big, weird, twisting love story.
But most of this album takes place when he goes to war.
This particular album is when he goes to war. It's about his combat situations, and the tank is where he's confronted by a tank from the enemy, and it's big and scary, and it really highlights that, I think, well. Yeah. And then there's Mustard Gas, which is another creepy song, and it's all you can really get the sense of what's being told in the story through the way the music plays. And this most recent one it's sort of just about how it's a transition point from his love of the whore to now he's at the end of the album he's going to be taking the place of another fallen soldier.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. So then Act 4 is speculated to be coming out next from this band. That's going to be their next project. And we'll see where the story goes from there. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. I enjoy it, and I'm interested to see where it goes next. It's definitely not what really makes the band, though. What makes the band is their musicality.
Yeah, I agree.
The near perfect vocal performances from Casey and the other members. It really, their harmonies are out of this world.
Yeah.
I love them almost as much as I love Extreme's harmonies. Their intro, another thing about the band, consistently on all 3 of the acts, the intro songs are really powerful, very, very strong, usually with multi-part harmonies, and like Jarrod said, this newest one is almost Beach Boy-esque.
It is very Beach Boys.
That's a very interesting way to put it. I never thought about it
That's immediately what struck me about it. It sounded like Beach Boys became the backing band for Coheed and Cambria. It was great.
Yeah, that's probably another reason why I absolutely adore these acts, is because it does sound a lot like Coheed and Cambria in just the musicality of it, and the way the songs are composed. It's very, very similar to Coheed, which is one of my personal favorite bands of all time. So yeah, it's a great album, I think. I'd give it a 4.5, a 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
Really, really solid album. And I'm really looking forward to Act 4 for sure. This Casey just keeps progressing as a writer with each consecutive album, and he gets a little bit more in depth into his own personal story with each consecutive album, and I think it's great. I really want to hear what's next.
Yeah, he's a very prolific songwriter too. especially because I was reading about Act 2, they wrote about 120 minutes of music that they had to pare down to 80 because they didn't want it to be a double disc set. And then between this, which is a long album, and then after this, they did this project called the Color Spectrum, which is just massive.
Oh, it's huge.
But the guy seems to just be able to write songs like it's nothing.
And for the most part, like, they're all really, really good. Like,
Yeah, there were no
really
tracks on this album that felt like filler.
No,
Despite the fact that I think the album might be a little bit long, there wasn't any moment where I was, tempted by the skip button.
No. All right.
But yeah, we're moving along.
Solid album.
Yeah.
And we're going to Branden. You got to talk some more. You're talking about your recommendation from
No, you're just getting me
Dan,
out of the way quick here.
the man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dan recommended me to watch Magic Mike.
Yes.
No.
McConaughey. Yeah.
Great movie, by the way. No. Dan recommended for me Magic Sam, the album West Side Soul. And this is some blues.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
This is blues. Like from now on, when someone asks me like, what's the blues? I'm gonna say it's West Side Soul by Magic Sam.
It is the
Oh my God.
straight up Chicago blues.
Yeah, like one of the comments I would say is like, I'm a Boston boy, but Sweet Home Chicago makes me want to go to Chicago.
Yeah.
It makes me want to call it home. Oh, really phenomenal album. I've never really listened to the blues much, but like I was grooving to this while I was putting together my IKEA desk last night, and really just fun album.
Great guitar work too.
The guitar work is really good. Magic Sam sings very well. He has so much soul in his voice. He's very bluesy. He's got all that tonality that one would look for in a blues singer.
Yeah.
Like some of the tracks on here that like I feel like I can really relate to, like I Don't Want No Woman, and like
It's a blues album when you hear that title.
Yeah.
Or like That's All I Need, which I'm pretty sure is also about not really needing a woman. No, it's got like all those classic blues tropes. Like this is the epitome of the blues, as far as I can tell. I really, really solid blues album. I don't know what else to say. It's like all the tracks are consistently well done.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that.
Very consistent guitar work. Magic Sam just killing it, honestly.
Magic Sam. The late great Magic Sam. I believe he passed away like a year after that.
Yeah, I think he only had one other album.
Yeah.
Released during his lifetime, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah. So I'm like, we recommended Branden some depressing albums last week. I gotta do a complete 360 and
yeah, and I recommended
do
an
some
album
blues.
about Satanism. So
Well, you did. But, I decided. Well,
Hey, that album wasn't a downer though.
that's what I mean. It wasn't a downer. I didn't want to recommend you a downer.
No, they were very.
That was a very blood pumping.
They were very upbeat about their Lord Satan.
Yeah.
They really love him.
So, what would you give this a rating of?
I'd give this like 5 out of 5. Really, really, really solid blues album. I listened to it like 6 times last night.
You said that. And Jarrod was like, 6 times? Holy crap.
That's a lot to listen to something in a row.
Yeah,
when
it's
you
only
find
like
an album that you listen to 6 times in a row, that's when you know you got a new favorite.
Yeah.
Like I've done that just a few times in my life.
It's only like 44 minutes long.
Yeah, it's a short, concise album.
It's very concise, but it's really, really great.
Yeah.
Loved it.
I get the chills when I hear the licks, and he puts his heart and soul into it, and that's what I think a true blues
That's what
legend
blues is
does.
all about.
Yeah.
That's really where the power
It's not
comes.
syrupy, it's just
Blues
straight-
is how much soul you can put into it.
Yeah.
It's not technicality. It's not,
nothing
those are
technical.
parts of it. But at the end of the day, it's how much soul, how much of yourself can you put into that form.
And you really feel the passion coming through, like in the progression of the music and his vocals. It's really, really powerful. And just a really smooth listen.
Yeah.
You can listen to it on end, like just in the background. You can listen to it in detail, and like no matter how you listen to it, it's just a very enjoyable album. Like you really can't go wrong.
Yeah.
It's multifaceted album.
This is one to show to your mother.
Yeah.
Mama
Well, good. I'm
was-
glad you liked it.
Really liked it.
Came out in 1968, so it's an oldie but a goodie.
Oldie but a goodie.
Oldie but a
Goodie
goodie.
but goodie.
Hey.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts on Magical Sam?
Magic.
Yeah.
Magical Sammy?
Great bod too, you know, like throughout the movie.
Oh.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
There's a breakout performance from Magic Sam. We're going to be moving along, and we're going to Dan with his recommendation from me.
Okay, so Jarrod recommended me Screamadelic.
Screamadelica.
Screamadelica.
Yep,
Oh, okay.
like Psychedelica.
I wrote Screamadelic, so sorry about that. Okay, and it was by a group called Primal Scream, which I've heard a lot about, and I was like, oh, okay. I'm glad Jarrod recommended me them. They are a Scottish alternative dance house band.
Sort of.
There's a lot of elements again with this band. I would kind of compare them also to like the Happy Mondays.
Would you say they're very musical?
They're very, very, very musical.
Was this a very musical album?
Very. It was a pretty good album. Certain songs I just couldn't really get into though, to be honest. But I will say, opening track, killer song, Moving On Up.
It's the best Stones song the Stones never wrote.
Yeah, exactly. Because I remember you mentioned that, like there's some elements of the Stones in there, and
I described this album to you as the Stones meet Acid House.
yes,
Which I think is accurate.
yeah, very accurate. I like to Come Together. The opening,
Very strong song.
opening, almost gospel-y, you know. Come together. Yeah. I liked Inner Flight. Overall, it was just a very interesting meld, like, of all the different subgenre. Like you said, like the Rolling Stones meet Acid House. It was, yeah. I don't really have too much to say about it, but it was just a very interesting listening experience, and I would give it a 3 out of 5 as well. I know you would probably give it higher, but
You're drastically underrating this album.
yeah, I mean, I just couldn't really get into it, man.
Like, what parts of this could you not get into?
Some of the beats really were like, eh. I just don't know. Yeah,
It's not really a description.
I can't really describe
What
it.
about it?
I just, it wasn't my cup of tea, I think, but I'll definitely keep giving it another chance. I know it is a very highly regarded album from what people wrote on Rate Your Music and, like, you know, just from other music lists that I've seen. They're definitely a band that's held in high regard. I don't know, I just couldn't get into it.
Okay, here's the story of how this album sort of happened. This album sort of happened. Primal Scream was, not very successful jangle rock band, and then sort of a not very successful hard rock band, and then Inns and Gillespie got into the UK acid house scene, started taking acid, and this is the classic like Creation Records story. The guy who designed the album cover, this great album cover, took acid and was in the Creation Records office, and staring at like a water stain on the ceiling, and he got the inspiration for it. They got into this acid house scene, started taking acid, and it just totally, brought their music to a whole different level. Teamed up with some classic producers like Andrew Weatherall to do production on this album. You get a track like Loaded, which is one of their old songs cut up beyond recognition and combined with this sample from this old biker movie with Peter Fonda doing this great vocal thing, like he says, "We want to get loaded and we don't care what you say." I forget exactly what he says, and then it like goes into the shuffling sort of house beat and these triumphant fucking horns. You have a 13th Floor Elevator cover on this album that's really interesting. Like Dan said, a track like Come Together, which is fusing, these house beats with gospel and alt rock. You have a dub track that's a takeoff of an earlier track on the album. You get 2 versions of it, Higher Than the Sun. This is such an infectious album. I can't like not listen to it, if that makes sense. I just want to hear it all the time, and it's very upbeat, very up-tempo. It sort of is the best of that drug movement, really, because, I mean, philosophically, because it embraces everything that acid was able to do positively for musicians like this. It really brought them a venue to make music like this and to be, heard, and it really influenced their creativity in a positive way. This is such a positive album. You can't come away from this not feeling good. It's just upbeat, it's sunny, it sounds fresh, it sounds, it's danceable, it makes you want to get up. But it's nuanced, and it's not just straight up beats and synths. It's got, pop crafted songwriting to it. I think every song is fucking ace. I have no complaints. It's one of my favorites. I'm really disappointed that you weren't able to sort of.
I didn't dislike
into it.
I just thought it was pretty good. I just thought it was pretty good. That's all I really have to say.
I wish you had more to say. I don't care if you dislike something or if you're not crazy about something, but, I don't know. I want more from you.
Okay.
Why you didn't like it. I don't know. If you can't give me that, I mean, that's whatever, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought some of the other songs didn't hold up to... I just thought it was a bit inconsistent at times. And I really, like I said, I really liked Moving On Up, and I really liked Come Together and Inner Flight. Those are the three songs I wrote down as standout songs, but I just feel like the other songs didn't kind of hold up to those other songs. I thought those were killer songs, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe it was like... I feel like whenever you guys recommend me an album, sometimes the first time I hear it, I don't get into it, but then like after I hear it a couple more times, oh yeah, now I really like it. So who knows really, but I mean, I don't want you to think I hated it. I just,
Yeah, I'd recommend this to all the people out there listening in Radio Land. Like I said, it's one of my favorites. And that's about it for that. Now I have to talk. And I'm talking about the recommendation that Dan gave me, which is The Move, Message from the Country. This is the forerunner band to Electric Light Orchestra with Roy Wood and Jeff Lynne.
Bev
Bevan doing their thing. It really made me want to listen to Rod Argent stuff. Like really bad.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Because you have Jeff Lynne songs on this album, and then you have Roy Wood songs on the album. The Roy Wood songs
and like one or two Bev Bevan tracks.
Yeah, there's one he wrote, and then another he sings.
Yeah.
Because the Jeff Lynne stuff is more sunshine pop. More sunshine pop, vocal harmony type stuff, and that made me want to listen to Zombies wicked bad. And then the Roy Wood stuff is more like rockin', psychedelic, prog light stuff that made me want to put on Argent really bad. A positive, I'll say I loved Bev Bevan's production throughout. There's a lot of really weird sort of clickety-clackety beats on some of these tracks that it sounded really weirdly modern. And then just some very sort of interesting percussion throughout that wasn't just so straightforward. It was a lot less straightforward than the songwriting. I have some lows and then highs of the album.
Okay.
For lows, No Time was a really weak track, very lethargic. It had a cool sort of penny flute accompaniment, but the song itself was very weak, I found. Don't Mess Me Up, I thought it was a real drag. It bored the shit out of me. Very sort of tired sounding 50s rock throwback. I have very little patience with gimmicky throwback tracks. I just want bands to do something fresh. And when they base a whole, sort of track like that off of just a throwback, it doesn't really sit well with me unless it's really, really good. And the problem with this, it just didn't pull off that 50s rock sound too well. I thought it was probably 30 or 40 clicks too slow, like BPM wise, and the doobie doo wop wop backing vocals just were too gimmicky for me. Another low for me was The Minister, Jeff Lynne track.
Really?
I didn't think it was a bad song, but oh my god, like, how did he not get fucking sued? It's Beatles plagiarism, this fucking track. It's like he took everything off Revolver and threw it in a bag and cobbled it together. It's not a bad song. I like the sort of muddiness of the production. It doesn't really complement the song, but I liked it. But the riff is like straight up Day Tripper, spacey guitar riff rip-off. It sounds just like fucking Paperback Writer, the melody. I was like, I was irritated.
That's what
by
a lot of comments said on Rate Your Music. They were like, yeah, it's just a copy of Paperback
I was irritated by it,
which
it sounded
can see that,
so much like the Beatles. I was just like,
well,
fuck.
a lot of his stuff is
Jeff
heavily
Lynne
Beatles.
does a lot of, like, Bluebird is Dead is a good track that's Beatles worship, but this was just so transparent to me. So fucking transparent. And then in true Beatles fashion, they follow that song up with Ben Crawley Steel Company, which is a total throwaway novelty track.
Yeah, it sounds like a wannabe Johnny Cash song.
I didn't hate... Well, it is, but it's like a novelty track.
Yeah,
because
it is a novelty.
Bev Bevan's vocals are, goofy. I liked his vocals. They were goofy and fun.
Very low bass.
I didn't hate this song, but it's like a throwaway. And when you're doing like a 39-minute album and you have this 3-minute throwaway track, it's sort of,
Yeah.
And it didn't go anywhere. It started and ended in the same place. It was very, the antithesis of progressive.
Yeah.
Those were like the big lows for me. Then there's some tracks that just sort of didn't do anything one way or the other for me. I just found them very forgettable. And then there's a few highs. I'll say Until Your Mama's Gone isn't really a very well written song. The hook is really standard, very forgettable. But I like the vocal performance from Roy Wood, and the fuzzy guitar, stood out to me. I liked it a lot. I liked It Wasn't My Idea to Dance. It has a really medieval sounding riff. And again, I like the vocals from Roy Wood. They're not really good, but they're manic in a sort of wonderful way that I like. 'Cause it just sounds like he's just going nuts.
Yeah.
Not in like a crazy nuts way, but he sounds like he's a little on edge, and I like that.
Yeah.
I like the wind instruments throughout this song, and really great percussion again. But the percussion for me was really the standout of the whole album.
Did you get a chance to listen to any of the bonus tracks?
No, I didn't.
There's some interesting things on there too. An original version of Do Ya, which is one of ELO's biggest hits. In some ways, I like that version better. It's a little grittier. It's more raw sounding. Very like the distorted guitar. There's no violins, and it's not as polished as the ELO version.
I thought Jeff Lynne in general came across as very weak on this album. His songwriting just did not do it for me.
Yeah.
I'll say The Words of Aaron, it's the song before the last, is his best track on the album.
I agree with you on that.
Probably the best song on the album. I liked the variety of sounds. You have saxes on this track, you have Wurlitzers, recorders, Moog synthesizers. It's a very rich song and instrumentation. I thought the harmonized vocals were a little overwhelming throughout. We don't need every verse and every chorus harmonized vocals. But it's sort of a good, vaguely prog-ish psychedelic track. But I thought the album as a whole, I would equate it to the very early ELO stuff because it just didn't really do it for me. It lacked character, and it sort of felt, even for 1971, very passé, very, what's fresh about this album that, wasn't fresh in 67? That's what I'm sort of saying. I don't know. It lacked character. It felt, not only with, the 50s throwback song, but, all the songs felt sort of derivative. I mean, they sounded like, a not as good Zombies, and Zombies was doing their best work 67, 68. And, they sounded like a version of Argent that wasn't quite up to snuff with what Argent was doing, 70, 71. But I didn't hate it. I didn't dislike it. It's probably stronger than an album like ELO 2.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I give it a very weak 3. Just because there was a few tracks that I did like, and I didn't really dislike anything on it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I can see why it's not really regarded as a classic. It doesn't really stand out from anything being done at that time. It's sort of very, very typical. And Jeff Lynne would later become a really great pop composer. Once El Dorado came around, where he's just penning one classic tune after the other. I love that LP.
Yeah.
But I think it sort of took him a long time to get his sound.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that.
This sort of feels like him trying to do what was around at the time and not quite pulling off. He's trying to do Beach Boys, trying to do Zombies, trying to do Argent.
Like My Marge sounds like Honey Pie by the Beatles. The last one.
Another throwaway. You have like 2 throwaway tracks on an album. And it's like, I didn't dislike either of them, but I didn't particularly like either of them. The whole album just sort of felt like the musical equivalent of the hippie era drop off, and they're all just treading water, waiting for their real inspiration to come along. And Bev Bevan's doing his thing in the background. I thought he was doing great, but until Jeff Lynne sort of hit his stride with El Dorado, his early stuff is very weak for me. But like I said, I didn't hate it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think the reason I had a hard time picking which Move album I wanted to recommend, because there was one before that called Looking On, and it's maybe I should have recommended that in hindsight. It's very hard rock. It's a hard rock album, almost funky at times. They sound like trying to think of a good, like it sounds like a Blue Cheer type album.
Yeah.
It's like more in that kind of school, because like they started off as a straight up pop band in the 60s. They were like a mod pop band. They were big in England, and then a lot of members left, and then Jeff Lynne came in, and then they were like a hard rock band for a little while, and then this album is very eclectic. I will say that. I mean, I kind of like the fact that they, I do agree with you. Don't Mess Me Up sounds like kind of a weak Elvis track.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I kind of liked their effort of trying new things. Like I love hearing albums where it's a bunch of different things going on, like a Johnny Cash type song, a Beatles type song, like a Zombies or Argent type track. It is a little all over the place, but I mean, some of my favorite albums are very all over the place. So if you like ELO, or if you like whatever Beatles, I think you might like this album. So
yeah, you might.
Yeah.
It's just like felt a bit like worship to me. Like the album was just worshiping the sounds and the artists they liked. They weren't really forging their own identity, really. Which is why the album sort of feels eclectic. It's just because they like different things and they're sort of trying them all on for size, and none of them are really, really working. The moments that are best is when Roy Wood gets more into progressive territory, because that's what he would later do.
Yeah.
And when Jeff Lynne gets more into sort of a Baroque pop or a more minstrel pop type of sound, which is what he would later sort of make his own version of with ELO.
Yeah.
The moments where they're trying to do Beatles, trying to do Zombies, trying to do Beach Boys, trying to do, 50s rock, sound so stale to me. Sounds so stale. Sounds just like, all right, we're making an album in 71. What's popular, Let's do a track
Johnny
that
Cash,
you could compare to The Association. Let's do a track you compare to this band. Let's do a Beatles sort of thing. People like Beatles. And I don't feel that they were not genuine with it. It just doesn't really appeal to me. Like I said, I'm very, very, sort of opposed to these sort of throwback bands usually, or bands that just, let's do a rockabilly song. That'd be so cool. It's like, if I want to hear rockabilly, I hear rockabilly. It's like...
Yeah, I got you.
I mean, bands that really do it well.
Yeah.
And then other bands, why do you just have one rockabilly track on a psychedelic pop rock album? It's like, where did this come from? Where is it going? It didn't come from anywhere. It didn't go anywhere. It just It's just sitting there. It's like the elephant in the room. It's like it indicates to me that problem that I have with it is that the band really doesn't have their identity yet. And I think because this album was made during the process of birthing ELO, and I think that first album was
they
made
were
at the
working
same
on it
time.
simultaneously, because Message from the Country, the opening track sounds very ELO based.
It's sort of this to me was more, a band before they found their identity.
Yeah.
And
so I agree with you.
It's sort of a relic of its time, and like I said, I can understand.
I liked some of the bonus tracks a little more than the studio tracks too. Like that song "California Man" that Cheap Trick does on the album "Heaven Tonight."
Yeah.
They did the original, and that's a better 50s rock, kind of throwback song. And then the original version of "Do Ya," the ELO classic. It was just I do get what you're saying though, Jarrod. They were trying to explore different options, and maybe it didn't work all the time, but they kept going forward, which is gotta give them credit for that. But
it eventually came to some good because I love ELO. But,
Roy Wood went to do Wizard after that. So
that's what I mean. Knowing where they went, you can hear the little bits of that in this album, and those are the moments that really are best. And those the other stuff you can see why they left it behind, which is why I'm not really crazy about those first two ELO albums either, especially the second one, because they're doing Roll Over Beethoven. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't gel, and they wouldn't do that crap later. They found their niche, and they sort of
Evil
got
Woman,
their
Telephone
own.
Line, all these songs,
They got their own identity, and I love ELO. I
Me
love
too,
El Dorado, like I said, and I love Time. I think that's a great
New
underrated
World
80s
Record,
album.
classic.
But those were our recommendations for this week, and I hope you enjoyed us talking to them.
Yeah.
Check the stuff out. If you liked what you heard, if something sounded interesting to you, check it out. Let us know what you thought. We'll be back next week with our final episode of the season.
For now.
The season.
Yes.
And it's going to be a big showstopper, so tune in for that.
Yeah.
And signing off, I'm Jarrod White.
I'm Dan Griffin.
Happy New Year.
See you later, Brandon.
Yeah.
And yes, have a happy New Year in August.
Take care.
See you later.
Everyone.
Take care.